Hi everyone, Tracy DW here. The World Reimagined created an experience that certainly lived up to its name. This charity brought together a range of artistic talent who focused on reimagining all that is truly great about being British, embracing the harmonious and the problematic nature of its past, striving to ensure that every individual may be seen. The trails throughout cities such as Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Swansea and places in central London, as well as the exhibition in Trafalgar Square, proclaimed a theme to remember and commemorate the Transatlantic Slave Trade and the legacy from it. Each of the 103 globes represented a perspective on this theme, and each contributing artist certainly did this theme justice. Central to the vision of the trails and exhibition was the use of art as a medium which provided us with the power and capability to reimagine, or to reinterpret imaginatively, our own representation. Not as others perceive us, but as we perceive our existence as we interact with this world, this life, our truth, our pain, our triumphs, our glory, and ourselves. Not wanting to miss out on the only weekend of this exhibition, I made the journey into London in the early hours of Sunday morning. As I walked through the maze of globes at Trafalgar Square and admired them as wonderful pieces of art, I began to contemplate other worlds of possibilities and asked myself the question, what other things could we reimagine? We could reimagine alternative history. What would the world be like if the transatlantic slave trade had never happened? Or actualised history, presenting Africa's global contribution to trade, industry, science, culture and the arts. Or realised history. What happened to the continent before the Europeans came, saw and colonised? In each of these scenarios, I began to reimagine my own interpretation of what could be visualised, but I don't think I would be able to portray it as masterfully as these artists. With each step I took, I could feel the diaspora moving a step further in progress as our past and legacy was indeed becoming more and more a part of the mainstream culture. No longer the preserve of just the Windrush in June, a carnival in August, and Black History Month in October. These, together with the Transatlantic Slave Trade and the Windrush Memorial in Brixton Square, have come together to form a cohesive narrative of our own time of remembrance and our own opportunity to say, lest we forget. And this particular weekend in November was well timed for it. It almost feels as if the time has come to recognise Black history as everyone's history. Everyone seems to be interested in redressing their miseducation about the past. Are we entering a period of enlightenment? Could this be a new renaissance? What do you think? However, can we still allow the transatlantic trade to be such a dominant narrative in our existence as a diaspora? Do we dwell on this and forget to look at and raise the profile of other narratives that are also uncomfortable truths? Not for the rest of the world, but for us. Such as the reality that many of our ancestors were actively engaged in selling each other like cargo, placing each other on boats bound for a life of misery in the Caribbean, Americas, and Southeast Asia, or the reality that Africa was not and still is neither homogeneous nor harmonious, but remains a complex balance of customs, dialects, cultures and lineages bound within social structures ranging from the nomadic to the settlement to the empire. The Europeans were the main disruptors, carving up the land and grouping people together who were not compatible. But it would be a good thing to embrace the reality that these incompatibilities were always there and our ancestors have always had their own internal conflicts, in spite of the efforts of Europeans to scramble these incompatibilities even further. As I walked through Trafalgar Square and admired the globes, many of them were eye-catching, but one in particular caught my eye. It was an image showing a hand holding a white bag with writing, a metaphor for the Bank of England paying compensation to the plantation and slave owners for their loss of income due to the abolition of slavery in England in 1807 and subsequently throughout the British Empire by 1833. Underneath the bag were hands stretched out holding bars of gold. I began to think about how compensation without reparation is probably at the heart of the racial, social and economic inequalities that we face today. I don't think that reparations are needed in order to turn the tables, but rather to redress the balance and achieve some equilibrium so that control of the narrative does not remain only and solely with those who were compensated. I was able to put this into context for myself when I climbed the steps and headed towards the National Portrait Gallery, and there at the top was a pop-up traditional Christmas market, which was in keeping with the season of year, but maybe inconsistent with the theme of the square down below. An African and Caribbean market may have been more fitting. With this realisation, it dawned on me that real reparations can more easily be conveyed in this way, providing black business and enterprise not only with opportunities to reimagine the representation of our past, but also to be able to benefit economically from our past for our present and for our future. When I began my podcast series back in October 2020, it was partially as a result of the tumultuous time that we were experiencing, but through the last 2 years it has marked many significant events in UK and world history. The time of recording this podcast episode marks the UK's official announcement of its economy going into recession. However, recession isn't always bad news for everyone. It can be a great time for resetting one's priorities in life and grasping new opportunities. Is this a great time for the diaspora to move forward in not only finding new ways to reimagine past wrongs, but also to reimagine our destiny and begin to reimagine the narrative of our representation from here on? If you liked this podcast, then stay on this listening platform and check out my other podcast episodes related to this one. There are so many, but for starters, go back to the first season and my first ever episode, HM Windrush, A Different Perspective. And also the third episode in the first season, The Pink Map Project, The Ultimate Paradox, A Backdrop to the Scramble for Africa, and Wind of Change Expanded, where I discuss the implications of British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan's groundbreaking speech in 1960, which acknowledged the changing state of Britain's empire and Britain's place in the world. And don't forget what I call the heart and soul of the Stories to be Told movement. My stories, or poetic narratives, Caribbean Wind, Caribbean Rush, Nights at the Round Table, the Berlin Conference 1884, and Gone with the Wind, Macmillan's Speech for Change, are all available on the website in both Kindle and paperback formats. And also the publications of the latest 4 titles. If you want to find out more, just visit storiestobetold.com and check out the learning platforms for The Journey's End, Giving Back Hong Kong, Bite from the Big Apple, A Story for New York, Hope for Zimbabwe, Arise the Phoenix, and A Story for South Africa. The paperbacks and Kindle versions for each title are now live on Amazon. So there's no competition for now, as the Aspiring Authors magazine promotion is over. But we've got lots of things coming up, and 2023 is just around the corner. Feel free to like, follow and share us on social media when you visit the website. Just click on to whichever social media link you'd like to follow us on. And as always, it's a pleasure and a privilege to share my learning journey with you in this podcast series, and I encourage you to either begin or continue your own. History is a matter of fact or perspective. I'm Tracy DW, and this is a Stories to be Told podcast. Stay safe, stay well, stay blessed. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next page.